August 21st, 2025, Goffstown Select Board meeting. Would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First up is the acceptance and correction of minutes from 7/28/25 and 8/11/25, public and non-public. Non-public on the 28th and then public and non-public on the 11th.
I'll make a motion, we accept the 7/28/25 non-public minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Jim. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion carries.
I'll make a motion, we accept the 8/11/2025 public and non-public minutes with corrections if need be.
Second.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Jim. Here again, any discussion, questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Announcements, we have none, Derek?
Correct.
I'm going to give public comment. Is there anybody here for public comment? Name, address, or name and address, yeah.
Good evening, Andy Cataract, 22 West Union Street, Goffstown. Also wanted to let, for full disclosure, I am a member of the Goffstown River Committee. I'm a member of the Piscataquag River Local Advisory Committee, and I'm also a property owner along the river that will be impacted from the removal of the Hadley Falls Dam. So in this capacity, I'm really talking as a property owner and also as a member of the community who enjoys and loves the Goffstown community. I would, not knowing where the discussion is going to go, so it's kind of odd talking before any of the discussion, but not knowing where the discussion is going to go, I would recommend not supporting the removal of the Hadley Falls Dam. I feel that I would recommend or hope that we can work with our state legislature or our federal delegation to find some type of alternative funding source to replace the Hadley Falls Dam with or without fish passage. I think in the proposal submitted by DES, the feasibility study, there's about a $5 million difference between removing the dam and removing the dam with fish passage. And I think the impact to the community is going to be huge over the long haul. And we don't know what it's going to look like when it's down. Right now, it would be a trickle of water going through some brooks, and it probably wouldn't even be a river. It would be just water kind of dispersing among rocks. And so that's my position, and I hope you'll consider that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll close public comment, and we have Corey here from New Hampshire DES who's got a proposal for us. And I think our discussion is, I'd like to point the discussion at, we were asked to sign on to a letter for a grant that NHDES is applying for, and they wanted our support, the select board and the town's support. And I think that's, Corey, what we're going to address this evening.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Good evening, Chair and Select Board members. Thank you for having me here tonight and to discuss the application we have that we're currently working on to apply for funding through the NHDES Aquatic Resources Mitigation Fund. I just want to start things off just because there was an article in the Union Leader last week that indicated the removal of Hadley Falls Dam, as shown here, would impact downstream Glen Lake, which is impounded by Greg's Falls Dam. That is not the case. The removal of this dam will not impact the elevation of the water downstream at Glen Lake. So just wanted to let that be known. But moving forward, so the Aquatic Resources Mitigation Fund, it's a funding mechanism here in the state of New Hampshire. It's administered by NHDES, but it's actually a nationwide fund. But really, what it does is if you are a developer or if you have a project, even DOT for that matter, in which you are impacting a certain amount of wetlands, generally it's over 10,000 square feet of wetlands, or more, and there's other parameters, acreage and such. But you either have to provide a substitute for those wetlands, so you have to put other wetlands in preservation, or you have to pay into what they call the Aquatic Resources Mitigation Fund. So generally, large projects that have impacts to multiple wetlands, like I said, anything from a DOT project to say a big box store project, have to pay into these funds. We are fortunate, I guess in some ways, as far as looking at funding here in Hillsborough County. So Hillsborough County has roughly $4.5 million in the coffer right now. There's not nearly that much in other locations, and so we are seeking that amount to basically restore the riverine wetlands we have here at Hadley Falls. As many of you know, in 2023 we applied for a NOAA grant. That was for a $20 million grant. It not only included the removal of Hadley Falls Dam, but it also included quite a few public amenities as part of that removal, a boardwalk along Mill Street, some other access points, ADA access points. And it also included a fish passage facility down in Kelly's Falls Dam. So that was going to be basically $13 million for the fish passage facility down there, and the remaining $6 million, $7 million for removal of Hadley Falls Dam. Unfortunately, we were not successful in that grant, for basically the reason being is there was just one too many moving pieces that the grant reviewers felt that were just unknown at the time, and so we were unsuccessful in that money. Since that time, we have sought other federal grants, but really the federal grant end of things is starting to dry up quite a bit. We're not seeing as much. We did recently apply for a $1.5 million grant for design of that fish passage down at Kelly's Falls, but basically we were told that, you know, they're no longer looking at $20 million projects, they're looking on projects in the order of just a few million. And so that's why we at least applied down there to try to get the design done so that hopefully funding in the future will come around. So with the lack in federal funding, we're looking at really state funding. And as far as I know we've discussed here and other times the needs throughout the inventory. State of New Hampshire owns 275 dams all throughout the state, of which there's roughly $414 million in capital needs at all of those sites, and just the 64 high hazard dams require 300 million of that. So this being one of the 64 high hazard dams. So we're really looking at ways that we can actually reduce that burden on the state coffer. Part of the issues is really boils down to funding and us having to present our capital requests to the legislature along with our operating requests. There was a bill in the House last year regarding shoreline fees to help pay for this infrastructure. Unfortunately, that bill was tabled, and so we're hoping the legislature picks it back up so we can look at other funding alternatives. But really, right now, we're looking at what we can possibly do to address this issue. And so in a nutshell, I'll quickly just kind of drive around right here. So as you have here, here's the spillway at Hadley Falls Dam. The low-level outlet is right here, goes through a residential structure down below, and then over here is the actual powerhouse over here. So DES does not own the footprint of the powerhouse. We do own this 4-bay intake area, the spillway, and nor do we own the residential structure on this side. So moving forward, the removal of Hadley Falls is really that spillway structure across here. So that is what's going to get removed as part of this project. And I just want to kind of go over some of the questions that were raised through the Rivers Committee. And, you know, there were several alternatives that were looked at. So once we realized we weren't able to go down the path of removing it using that NOAA money, we started looking at, okay, we need to look at all the different alternatives. And basically our consultant at the time came up with 5 different alternatives. One being just remove the spillway, don't deal with the sediment behind there. 2, remove the spillway, deal with the sediment. 3, remove the spillway, do all the public improvements that we sought in the NOAA grant. 4, rebuilding the dam with a fish passage structure, and 5, rebuilding the dam without a fish passage structure. And after reviewing all those alternatives, really given our current funding status, the operation and maintenance needs of the structures moving on, and the fact that this site still has a federal FERC license for hydropower, even though it hasn't generated hydropower since 2007, and the need to address instability issues at the dam. So currently, FERC is concerned about the stability of the spillway, along with the stability of the walls adjacent to the both ends of the dam. And so that's why the do-nothing approach is not an option here, and we're getting pushed by FERC to do something. And so, looking at the ARM fund and the parameters around the Aquatic Resources Mitigation Fund is really, they're looking at preservation. And so they're not concerned with public improvements, nor do they want to fund public improvements. And so that is why one of the questions that came out of the Rivers Committee is, why didn't you look at the alternative that has all the public improvements? The reason being is because it likely will not be funded by the ARM fund. There's just too much public impact in that water body. For example, they want to see along Mill Street here, this turn into a true riverine restoration project. They want to see a boardwalk that's covering all that vegetation all the way across. Now, in our proposal, we do still intend on having public access at this location right here where people come in. This is right next to the dry hydrant that comes out just below there. And then also way upstream, up by the park, we also intend on having public access down here, where currently there's a set of stairs coming down as well. And we certainly will be working with the town to really come up with how those public access points will be managed, to not only provide that public access, but to mitigate any impacts that public access has on the aquatic resource that we're really trying to preserve here. So that is the reason we chose to go with alternative 2. It's also likely the alternative, if we don't get ARM funding, that we will also go after. Given the needs, as I previously mentioned, all the public improvements really exceed what we could really foresee doing at this site. Because not only do we have to restore the river, remove any sediment that may cause issues to downstream Glen Lake, but also because of those dry hydrants that we have coming in here, we want to be able to provide the town with new hydrants that tap into the water main to make sure we have that fire suppression need moving forward. The next question was, how does the project have a lasting impact on the community and adjacent property owners? Well, the adjacent property owners, what will happen here, so NHDES has what they call flowage. Historically, this dam actually had 2-foot flashboards on it, and so our flowage wraps around the impoundment at that 2-foot flashboard elevation. So that is essentially an easement on all the abutters, and that is how we are going to make sure that this is maintained in the future. So those adjacent property owners, that piece of land that abuts up to the river, as the river goes back into its historic channel, that area will be not only managed by DES, but also restored by DES. So if there's any sloughing issues, anything like that is caused by this river restoration, it's our job to address those as needed moving forward. So, and the property owners, and I'll get to this in a little bit, but basically those property owners are gonna, once again, be able to enjoy the river as it was in its natural state. The next question is basically construction impacts, and this will be managed as any other construction project would be. As the town is well versed in construction projects, this is handled just the same. If we have to do pre-construction surveys at the adjacent buildings to make sure any cutting, hammering, that sort of thing is addressed, we will certainly do what needs to be done. Because if this dam was going to be restored anyways, the spillway would have to be removed and replaced. So the hammering, the cutting, the same issues that will come up as a removal would be the same issues that would come up as a repair. So we will address that as needed and work with the abutters as needed as well. And then it also goes into the FEMA floodplain mapping. So currently, the FEMA floodplain maps show flooding in this area about 6.5 feet higher than what you see currently here today. So actually, I reiterate that. That's 6.5 feet higher than the top of the dam. So the top of the dam really is this concrete right here. So you're talking about 6.5 feet of water going over Mill Street. That's roughly what we will see based on the 100-year event as shown by FEMA. And that's really what our consultant also found out. So as part of this project, we have to look at what is gonna happen if that dam goes away, and so we will address any issues with FEMA as needed. So that is what the money is being set aside for as well. And next question being how NHDS support impacted property owners. So that's the same thing as I previously mentioned. So as the river returns to its natural state, if there are issues, then we will address those issues. A lot of this is really going to revegetate quickly. That's what we find all throughout the state on our projects. Pretty much if we drain an impoundment in the springtime, I guarantee by July it's going to be green, because there are seeds in that sediment that will restore. Now, if we find out that that sediment is contaminated, it needs to be landfilled, we will address that as well. And that really boils down to some of the unknowns associated with the cost. Can you leave the sediment in place? Can you move that sediment into floodplain areas? Does all that sediment have to come out? And really, what is the thickness of the sediment? So we already have a sediment sampling plan in place that's going to take place regardless if this grant moves forward or not. And that is taking place this summer as well. And so we'll be testing for heavy metals, testing for PCBs, testing for organic compounds, things of that nature. And then really, how does this project align with the downstream Kelly's Falls project? As I already mentioned, we are seeking funding for that. But really, I wanted to kind of just give some numbers as to what we're seeing here with these three dams. Not only do we have Hadley Falls, but we have Greg's Falls, and then we have Kelly's Falls. So as part of that study that was done by our consultant that matched that FEMA elevation of about 6.5 feet, we looked at what happens during the 1,000-year event. Here in New Hampshire, these high hazard dams have to basically maintain a foot of freeboard during the 1,000-year event. So that's 1 foot from the top of the dam to the water surface. Now, just orders of magnitude, the 1,000-year event, we are talking about North Carolina and Texas. That is the orders of magnitude of what would happen out here. And New Hampshire is no exception. We will see that 1,000-year event at some point in time, hopefully not anytime soon, but the hurricanes, just like what happened in North Carolina, can boil right through here and run up to the mountains and produce the same flows. So I already mentioned the 100-year event is about 6.5 feet. The 1,000-year event is about 10.5 feet of water over the top of this dam. So you're going to see flooding all throughout downtown, and certainly not only did the dam, but the surrounding infrastructure can not handle that. So by removing the dam, we remove that risk. Going back to Kelly's Falls, well, Greg's Falls, as part of that study, actually has 2 feet of freeboard. We have to remember the spillway at Greg's Falls is an order of magnitude about 4 times the size of the Kelly's Falls spillway. Down at Kelly's Falls, we're going to see about 5 feet of water going over that entire dam during the 1,000-year event. That dam will not withstand that event and will fail. So the loss in Nemaski Lake. Now it's my job at NHDES to address that deficiency. And that is something at some point in time. This is all above and beyond the fish passage issues. But we will have to address the discharge capacity at Nemaski Lake. And that is a goal of ours to address that. We are seeing other sites where we are trying to address this. The order of magnitude of those projects, somewhere between $10 and $15 million. And once again, that comes out of the state capital reserve fund. And so it's always a challenge on getting those funds when the state generally somewhere distributes anywhere between 100 million and 150 million. So certainly those projects take a big bite out of that. So just going back to Hadley Falls here, really I wanted to point out to kind of end the conversation of what it will look like. I was out here just recently to do a FERC inspection. Once again, it's still a FERC dam, and so we still need to abide by general FERC guidelines. And so what we're planning on doing is right here we're going to, we will remove the spillway, expose all this bedrock you see down here, will all be exposed, moving back into the impoundment. The river will find the course through the lowest channel in that bedrock. We're going to build a new concrete wall on this side to protect this infrastructure over here, address those structural issues as part of this removal. And over here, we're going to build a new concrete wall over here, once again, to protect the investment of the abutter over there, and also to protect the powerhouse there. So really, by having those walls, that helps channel everything down through the removed spillway. And then what will it look like? Well, really the best example is what does it look like downstream? So as you move downstream here, yes, it will go back into a riverine environment. And I was just down here by the powerhouse recently, and quite frankly, this area was being used extensively by the abutters. There's everything from Adirondack chairs down there to patio furniture, and really, it's gonna turn back into what you see here today. Having this exposed bedrock, allowing that vegetation to reestablish, and really not only help the aquatic organisms, but really help the water quality, and quite frankly, probably benefit the water quality going down into Glen Lake with a lower water temperature, not having all this surface impoundment currently that we have exposed to, as you know, this summer, the high heat, and also the bacterial blooms, things of that nature that everybody is now becoming concerned with. So that is our goal with this project, and that is what we're seeking the ARM fund for. And so with that, I will open any questions, and certainly would like to see the support of the town on this.
Thank you. We're going to start with Richard. Have you got any questions?
I just want to make sure that I'm understanding something correctly. The state currently, the state owns these dams, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the project to remove them, are you going to pursue that with or without the town support?
Yeah, unfortunately,
Okay.
this is one of the dams that is going to have to be removed, seeing that the capital needs all throughout our infrastructure. And really what we're concerned with are those bodies of water like Namaski that have built up development that really depends on that, not only from property values, but also the general recreational community and everybody else. Now, I know obviously this provides recreational benefits, but in this case, the state certainly sees that the removal of this benefits the state more than the other end in the recreational benefits and how those benefit the state. Now, if they were all owned by the town may have a different opinion on how to pursue this.
Thank you. That's all.
Sure. You mentioned that you had $4.5 million in funds right now. Is that correct?
We don't have, that is what we're seeking through the ARM funds for this.
You said that's how much exists there. So is there not some ability to add any sort of recreational area in addition to the $3 million, roughly $2.9 million that you're looking to spend?
So part of the issue is really the definition of those ARM funds. Those ARM funds are for the preservation and establishment and restoration of wetlands. And when you introduce the public into that, that benefit goes away. And so really, the reviewers on the ARM fund side don't see it as a benefit because their goal is to restore those wetlands. It is not to provide the public benefit.
No, I get that, but they do have New Hampshire taxpayers that are sitting on the side of that river, so one would think that they're also concerned about them as well.
Correct, but the ARM fund isn't tax-paying money. The ARM fund comes from developers and others that pay into that fund, so it's not funded by the taxpayers in New Hampshire.
Do you have a picture of the original river flow?
We don't. This dam was built in 1918, and so we really don't know what the original river flow is. I mean, we've done bathymetric surveys out there to try to figure out where that Thalweg is, but we don't know at this time, and that's part of our ongoing studies, and we're gonna have to figure that out regardless. Is where is that? Because that really plays into how the sediment will be moved once the dam is removed.
I was told there's a natural shelf underneath the Hadley Falls area. Will that actually retain some of that, or are you actually digging all of that out?
So our understanding is some of the deeper channels, I'm sorry I can't go backwards further downstream, but really some of the deeper channels are over here and over here. And so likely this is probably gonna turn into some bedrock island out there. And certainly it's more shallow on this side. Now, is that sediment sitting on bedrock? Unknown at this time, likely so. Will that sediment be stabilized in place or removed to expose that bedrock? Unknown at this time too, and that's something we'll have to address either way.
Sure, okay. You also mentioned the 100-year and the 1,000-year. Your statement was that if you get rid of the Hadley Falls Dam, that risk goes away. Is that true?
Well, the risk borne by the state of New Hampshire for liability of a dam failure does go away.
Okay.
So, for
you
example,
get rid of your liability, it's not necessarily you get rid of the risk.
well, the risk is likely going to be there regardless. But in 2023, the water level did get high enough at this structure that we had to evacuate the residents at this
I
location.
just wanna be clear with all the people in the town that the dam going away is not necessarily getting rid of that risk.
Well, it's getting rid of the risk to the homeowner abutting it that is caused by the dam.
You're getting rid of any potential issue that the dam could cause in itself or add to it. However, it does not mitigate the risk.
That is unknown at this time. I mean, the dam currently, in its current state, already elevates that water surface probably 6 feet above the natural course. So you're already starting at a higher elevation for any given storm event, whether it's the 5-year event or the 1,000-year event. So by removing this body of water and getting the water surface down lower, you are starting at a lower elevation. How that will play out during the actual storm event is unknown.
I'm good, Peter.
Jim?
Thank you.
So, would you describe, I know there's a definition for high hazard, would you, for some of us who haven't been through the whole process, define what a high
Sure.
hazard?
A high hazard dam here in the state of New Hampshire is if that dam would fail, there'd be probable loss of life of 1 or more people. And so we certainly have high hazard dams here that if those dams were to fail, to be orders of magnitude in the thousands of lives lost. We have dams here such as this one. The reason this is a high hazard dam is because of that residential structure attached to the dam. So if this dam was to fail, there would be life loss in that structure, and so that is why this is classified as a high hazard structure.
Well, just to follow up on that, you said that the state in its plan would put walls on either side of, to protect the two abutting properties there.
Correct.
Would that alleviate the danger to those properties if you left the dam there?
So even if we left the dam there, by having the structure attached, whether it's a brand new concrete wall or a crumbling concrete wall, it is still a high hazard dam associated with that structure.
Okay, if, there was talking about sediment being, what do you call it?
Contaminated?
Contaminated, thank you. And I saw somewhere in here, I can't find it right now, but there was a whole bunch of possible sources of contamination. Could this result in liability for abutting property owners who have been found to be the source of contamination? Would the state be pursuing that?
So historically, a lot of the contamination comes from basically non-point sources. In this case, it likely wouldn't be any of the property butters that we see here today. We're talking about historic industry that was upstream in New Boston and in Ware that contributed to the contamination that basically deposited into those sediments. And so as part of this removal, the state is liable for dealing with those contaminated sediments and removing those sediments.
Okay.
One more, go ahead.
Okay. Have we determined who owns the land that will be created by knocking down the,
So in most cases, the land under the water is actually owned by the abutters. It all depends on how the deeds were written. If you have a deed that is written such that extends to the edge of the water on the Piscataquag River, then regardless of where that edge goes, you own the land. Now, our flowage, our easement still sits on top of that land. So the abutter can't put a building on that or anything else because we still retain that easement. It's no different than a power line easement as well. Whether or not the lines are there, the easement is still there. And so the ownership likely is already there under the water and we just have flowage on top. And that is how most of them are written. Some of them are written such that it just goes by meets and bounds. And in that case, the historic deed of the heir, whoever owned that parcel originally, the ownership would revert back to that, and that does happen from time to time as well.
okay. And there was talk about the Army Corps of Engineers. What role will they retain any jurisdiction, I don't know if they have any now, over the
So
river?
this comes into play because the Army Corps of Engineers, basically all wetland applications goes through not only DES wetlands review, because we are a programmatic permit state, but also goes through Army Corps review. So Army Corps in the United States oversees wetland impacts and wetland jurisdictions. So this will get Army Corps review from that perspective.
Now, I'm gonna hold off right now, because I have a public hearing scheduled at 6:30. If you hold on, we'll come back and we
Oh,
can
sure.
finish up, if that's okay
course.
with you.
Thank you.
Can you put the light on, Mark?
Yep.
Well, I do one eye, I can't see out of the other. So the Goffstown Select Board is conducting this public hearing in accordance with RSA 41:14A to accept public input regarding the granting of a permanent easement across the town's rail trail. Tax map 19, lot 47-6 to the Henley Investment LLC, owner of tax map 5, lot 54. A second public hearing is scheduled for Monday, 9/9/25 at 6:30. The Select Board is scheduled to vote on the granting of this easement on 9/22 of '25. Goffstown Planning Board approved the 30-unit residential condominium development at 134 Mass Road. The plan requires permanent access and utility easement across the town's rail trail. I'll now open up the public hearing. Is there anybody here for the public to speak to this? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and we'll be back again on,
I think, let me just check, I think there's actually a correction on the date, it should be September 8th, not the 9th.
so it should be 9/8.
Yeah, so your second public hearing will be on Monday, September 8th at 6:30 PM,
Okay,
and we will just confirm that we have that posted correctly.
all right. So that'll be it for that.
Yep.
Okay, let's come back up now, we can finish. Jim, did you have any more questions?
Just one.
Mike,
Corey, you've got a price to do alternative two of $4,500,000, right? How much, again, I forgot, how much would it cost to restore the dam?
So restore the dam without fish passage is roughly, in fact, I believe it's,
It's a little over $5 million without the fish passage.
and I believe it's, with the fish passage, is about $10.5 million.
Correct.
And how much without it?
So
Without it, it's about $5.5 million.
Yeah, 5 million. 10 with.
Okay, all right, thank you, Corey.
So let's get back to the brass tacks of this, to be honest, Corey. What is, the dam's gonna go? Is that one way or another with whether we agree or not?
Yeah, I mean, as it stands right now, we are pursuing removal at this site.
There were some options that if somebody wanted to buy it, they could buy it. Are those options still out there?
Those options are still out there, yes.
When they do that, do they accept the liability? And what would FERC still require them to remove the dam?
Yeah, so what would essentially happen, and we see this elsewhere, is just like selling anything else, the deed, everything turns over to the new owner. That FERC license then gets transferred from DES to that new owner. And so that new owner is going to have to abide by the FERC regulations on this.
And is there a time frame from FERC on when this has to be done?
Not yet. So FERC, I've been keeping them updated as to where they are. They could certainly establish a time frame at any given time. We've been fortunate as of yet, they have not done that. As you'll recall, prior to us making the decision to remove this dam, really, that's when they gave us that ultimatum of May of 2023 to make a decision on this. And that's why we made that decision, so that kind of reset the clock. But I do know that, they are concerned about making sure that, we're not lagging too much on this and we are addressing their concerns.
So going back to the FERC and the licensing, when the letter was sent out last May or April, whenever sent the letter, then the DES had said they were relinquishing the FERC license. Is that right or wrong?
That is correct, and so what will happen is we have to surrender the FERC license. And so that has to happen one way or the other, because if you remove the dam, you're surrendering the license. And so as part of all of this, is FERC will have to buy into this concept and this idea moving forward. Their biggest concerns, as far as I am aware, is that the dam itself is unstable, the abutting walls are unstable, and that needs to be addressed. FERC, they don't care if we fix it all or if we remove it all. They just want those safety concerns addressed.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
You mentioned the Kelly Falls Dam. How much was it? I heard a figure for the fish ladder to be
13 million. on the
13
fish-
million,
fish
okay.
ladder.
Is that 13 million available by the state, or is that gonna have to be on grants?
No, that will likely have to be on grants. Just for example, my biannual budget for capital funds for these sorts of projects currently is about, we just stepped into a new fiscal year, is 10.2 million. So I have to spend that throughout the whole inventory of 275 dams throughout the state. And quite frankly, I'm looking at 50-plus-year-old gates at Lakeport Dam. I know that doesn't concern the town of Goffstown. And also our biggest dam up in Pittsburgh, New Hampshire, a $4 million gate rehab project that definitely needs to take place up there. So that money is already allocated at other sites, just to try to basically keep those sites functioning.
I just want to keep our focus on the letter they're asking us to support the grant, which is directly to Hadley Falls. Yeah.
And if I may, Chair, I just want to say that regardless if the town or the River Committee wants to support this or not, we are certainly going to work with the town and the River Committee to try to get this to be a successful project. The last thing we want is to have things hanging out there or anything else and have issues crop up, whether it's from the dry hydrants, from public access, whatever it may be. We're certainly going to work with the town on this regardless of support or not.
My concern, and I stated this at the committee meeting last week, was that if we get on board and with help in the grant, we may have more leverage to get you to do something else or help us with other stuff there, versus we wouldn't want you to say, well, you didn't help us, so don't come asking me.
Well, and that's why I made that statement, because
Yeah,
I'm certainly not here to have it, a tit for tat or,
Yeah,
type kind of thing. We're gonna work with the abutters, the town, whomever, to make this a successful project, with the funding that we can. Now, if I'm squeezing out of that 10.2, then there might be, things such as public access or, 2 hydrants, I don't know, but, that scope of what's available gets smaller and smaller. And that's why these grants, certainly whenever they present themselves, I do what I can to try to go after the money.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else good?
I'm just curious to that, Peter, so
Did you have something else? Go
I
ahead.
did. If there is extra funds, then you could help out in other areas, is that the case or no? Like dealing with the waterway?
I think the biggest issues that we may run into, in which we have to start pulling in capital funds, is if the sediment is truly contaminated, if there's more historical resources that have to be mitigated that are, like currently, actually, you can see a little bit of it right here. There's, actually, no, those are weeds, but basically that stretch right there, in fact, if you go out there today, the water is low enough, you have the sunlight right, there's the historic dam right here. In fact, in those materials that I sent you, in 1990, when this was all drained for work on the spillway, you can see the historic wooden dam upstream. And so that will be removed as part of this, but obviously we have to do the historic mitigation piece, whether that's signage, and we work with the town on that, to have an interpretive sign, website thing. That's really driven by the State Historic Preservation Office, but that's where the additional funding will be needed, I likely see.
Anything else? Great. Well, we appreciate you coming in, and we'll debate whether we do the letter in a little bit when we get down to old business.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Corey. Next up is the town administrator's report. That's tab 6.
Yes, tab 6, you have your committee meeting assignments for the next 2 weeks. Wednesday night at 6:30 PM, Historic District Commission will meet at Grassmere Town Hall.
Yep,
And at 7 PM, Conservation Commission will meet in this room.
I'll be here.
The following week, just a reminder, next Monday is the Labor Day holiday. So Town Hall, DPW, the transfer station, and the Goffstown Library will be closed on Monday. The transfer station will be closed on Saturday, August 30th. Curbside pickup will follow its normal schedule next week. 5:30 PM next week, the Village Bridge Ad Hoc Committee will meet at the Parks and Rec Building at 5:30 PM. So that's Selectman Douglas. Wednesday
You'll be
at
here?
6 PM, Economic Development Council will meet in this room.
That's me.
6:30 PM, the Library Board of Trustees will meet at the library. And then on Saturday, September 6th, the Goffstown Planning Board has a site walk scheduled for 9 AM.
That's up on Blackwood
Yeah, I'll
Road.
be there too.
You have a consent agenda that was updated today. It was on the table when you walked in. Employee status reports, you have at Town Hall a bookkeeper, end of probationary period, and step. At GTV, you have a per diem videographer resignation, that was added today. DPW, you have the separation of a full-time truck driver. DPW, you have separation of 2 seasonal laborers. DPW, you have a separation of a seasonal engineering intern. At Fire, you have the retirement notification from the full-time fire chief. You have a full-time firefighter military incentive per the CBA. You also have at Fire a per diem AEMT new hire. At Police, you have a new hire of a full-time dispatcher, and you have a new hire appointment of a full-time officer. For cemetery rights to inter, you have West Lawn Cemetery, Columbarium B, Row A, niche number 1. It's a new deed. West Lawn Expansion Cemetery, section W1, lot 3A, new deed. Shirley Hill Cemetery, section 2, lot 69A, this is a lot swap. Shirley Hill Cemetery, section 3, lot 509A, this is a new deed. And Shirley Hill Cemetery, section 3, lot 108Y, that's a new deed. And finally, for an event permit, you have the Uncanunic Mountaineers Snowmobile and Mini Bike Shop and Swap Meet on October 25th on the corner of Parsons Drive and North Mast Road.
Derek, this meant to say today's date, not June.
Correct, that should be for today's date.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented with the modified date of 8/25 on the per diem videographer.
Second.
Motion by Josh, seconded by Mark. Any further discussion? Anybody questions? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion carries.
At your next page, you have your assessor's recommendations. The assessor is recommending the approval of a land use change tax and a land use change tax warrant for map 4, lot 68.
I make a motion to approve the assessor's recommendation as presented for map 4, lot 68, as approved.
Second.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Josh. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion carries.
At your next page, you have a memo from the assessor. He has prepared the 2025 MS1 summary inventory evaluation. Also included is the summary inventory evaluation for the properties in the Grassmere Village Water Precinct boundaries, as well as the Goffstown Village Water Precinct boundaries. There is a net valuation increase of 0.8%, and there's also a slight decrease in the dollar amount of exemptions of about minus 0.25%. There's also, that's pretty much it, so we would just be looking for your approval of that. That's one of the first puzzle pieces that needs to fall into place for tax rate setting in October.
Questions? Motion?
Motion to approve the 2025 MS1
As presented.
as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Jim. Any discussion? Questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion carries.
Tab 6E, you have a memo from the DPW director. There is a non-driving Goffstown resident has requested a Glen Lake waterfront parking permit. We have provided these in the past. It's typically generated by either DPW or administration for windshield mounted permit. So this is a resident living at 162 Mass Road and has requested a permit so she can be driven to Glen Lake, the waterfront park there.
Make a motion to recommend issuing the Glen Lake waterfront non-driver permit to Mark C. Wells.
Second.
Motion by Josh, seconded by Jim. Any questions, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion carries.
At tab 6F, the Goffstown Cemetery trustees have a vacancy due to the resignation of one of the members. The state law provides that vacancies shall be filled by the selectmen for the remainder of the term. So this 3-year staggered term goes through town meeting in March of 2027. So you need to fill that. Our suggestion is you may want to consider advertising for volunteer applications for a short period, for a 30-day window, so that we can get it up on our website and get it out. And then we can do that, and then does the select board want to ask the cemetery trustees for a recommendation on volunteers that submit? So it's really 2 questions. Do you want to advertise for a period? And if you do receive an applications, do you want a recommendation from the cemetery trustees, or do you want to make the decision on your own?
So I think the first one is we want to make a motion to put an advertisement in for volunteer for the cemetery board.
Yes, that would be the first
I
item.
make a motion to
Second.
Motion by Josh, seconded by Mark to advertise for 30 days the open position of cemetery trustee. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion carries.
Make a motion for the cemetery trustee to provide recommendations for the,
Based on the submittals?
based on the submittals.
Yep.
Seconded.
Motion by Josh, seconded by Rich. Somebody had to speak up. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion carries.
At tab 6G, you have a memo detailing a recommendation for appointment of a new treasurer and deputy treasurer to replace current employees that fill these roles. This is a part of a multi-phase reorganization that's happened here in Town Hall. It started last year. So the recommendation is we do have Zach Coughlin, who's serving as the finance director and has been in that role for a little under a year at this point. And our recommendation is to appoint him as the treasurer, and then to move Danielle Basora, our assistant town administrator, and HR director to the role of deputy treasurer.
Who was currently the treasurer?
Danielle is currently the treasurer, and I am currently the deputy treasurer.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Zachary Hoffman as the treasurer of the town of Goffstown per RSA 4126E.
Yep.
Motion by Josh, seconded by Mark. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion carries.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Danielle Basora as the deputy treasurer for the town of Goffstown per RSA 4129A.
Yep.
Motion Josh, seconded by Mark. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion carries.
At tab 6H, and then the following tabs right after that, you have the 3 financial policies that we brought to you at your meeting on August 11th. Again, this is the revenue collection and turnover policy, which was originally adopted in 2005. We have a complete rewrite of this that we are proposing. There were some questions at your meeting on August 11th. We felt it was best addressed by taking the word clerk out throughout and using staff or staff member, so that it's not referring to a specific job or job description, rather the staff that is responsible for that. Debt management policy was originally adopted in 2007. You have a red line. Again, there was no changes based on the discussion at your August 11th meeting. And then the final one would be a fund balance policy, where we've added some definitions of assigned and committed fund balance. And then we've also put some standard language for policy review and effective date.
Take them one at a time.
Sure. Make a motion to adopt the rewritten revenue collection and turnover policy as proposed and replace the policy and procedures for the turnover department collections originally adopted in 2009.
Second.
Motion by Josh, seconded by Jim. Any discussions, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion carries.
Make a motion to adopt the proposed revision of the debt management policy originally adopted in 2007.
Yep.
Motion by Josh, seconded by Mark. Any discussion, questions on that one? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion carries.
Make a motion to adopt the proposed revision of the fund balance policy originally adopted in 2007 and revised in 2022.
Yep.
Motion by Josh, seconded by Mark. Any discussion on this one? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion carries.
Thank you. That's all we have in the town administrator's report.
Okay. Anybody have anything on the new business?
May open a can of worms, but I'll bring it up. Couple things. One is that the electrical boxes that we had approved never got painted. And I meant to bring it up last time we were here. Part of it is that the boxes sit in front of the church, and my understanding is that they didn't paint them because there was a disagreement about access to the electrical boxes. So during the old home day, they didn't paint them like they had planned. I still think they should do it, but I think they need to come back with a new design because they painted it on like canvas or something.
You know anything about that?
Yes, so I know that one of the ones that was out here on Mass Road, they did not have access to it. Main Street has indicated that they do not want to necessarily press the issue at that location, but rather they thought that perhaps the little pocket park that sits on Church Street on the right between the Congregational Church and what used to be the hair, the Village
Hair
Hair Salon,
Yep.
and most recently the used bookstore. There is a town-owned electrical box there as well, and they would be potentially looking to do that at that location, to paint that one instead. We have Main Street, their design committee is gonna be coming into you with another project on September 8th as well to speak about.
So let's take that up then, okay?
Okay.
My understanding though is around that box still is owned by the town, correct? Even at the one that they wanted to do.
Yes.
So it shouldn't have been a discussion on whether or not they had access.
I think because they work with the different property owners here down in the village, and they use many different, they have many different events where they're using actual property owned by those property owners, they felt they didn't wanna push that issue as what was
Right, but
indicated.
that's what I'm saying, it's still not that property owner's property, it still sits with the town. So that's the first item I wanna make sure I bring up. The other one is that I've been approached by a couple people saying that they're wondering if there's any way that hours could be adjusted at the transfer station. Because it's very hard for a lot of people that are working normal jobs to get there. So I just wanted to bring that to the select board, because it has been a discussion from a couple people that have talked to me.
Been a discussion every time,
Yeah.
every year we hear the
It's a
same thing,
yearly
it's nothing
discussion.
new. And, you know, I'm not opposed to doing something different, I mean, but I would wanna work with the DPW director and that personnel to see what and I'm not really sure what they're looking to do, open up later hour, one day a week, or,
Yeah, I think that they had referenced like Bedford and a few other places, like the people that I talked to, said that they had hours that still allowed access for people that are working jobs on the weekends a little bit longer, or, you know, even at night times, because the hours are what, 7:30, I think, to 3:30, or Tuesday through
Saturday.
Saturday. Yeah, which during the weekdays, I think that's relatively hard for people to get to normally, unless, of course, they take the day off or they're working second shift or third
And
shift.
So I guess my question has always been, is we supply trash pickup and recycling pickup. So is this for bulky waste stuff, yard waste? Is there something specific that needs attention?
Yeah, I think it's probably a combination of a multitude of things, I think, Peter, from the individuals that have approached me.
I know if it's
But you're right, I mean, we do have trash pickup, I agree with that,
You know.
right? It's probably when they're trying to like,
Bedford
do
doesn't,
things.
Bedford doesn't have.
Bedford
trash.
doesn't have it,
So
agreed.
when we're talking about comparison hours with Bedford and other places that don't offer trash pickup, well then I can understand, we don't offer trash pickup, which we can do that too, cut that out and everybody can haul their stuff, which
It would save money.
Yeah, it'll save a lot of money, but, you know, that's the reason why Bedford does that, because, you
Yeah.
know, they can get away with it because they don't have trash pickup or recycling, so. Something to think about. I think if somebody wants to come up with a plan, and we talked to DPW director, if there was 1 or 2 days a week we could do it,
All right.
we definitely could talk to him.
Is that the direction from the board to at least
Yes.
have Adam come back?
Well, I don't know, that would be my,
Yeah, at least discuss it.
yeah.
I'd have
Okay, I will talk to them and we'll put it on a future agenda.
Anything else?
That's all I have, thank you.
Okay, we'll go to old business. I think we know the old business that we have in front of us is the letter of recommendation for the dam funding. Not. Go ahead, Jim.
Can I say-
Give me a funny look.
We didn't do
We will. We'll
oh,
get
yeah,
there.
we're gonna do it later. No, I was just wondering, why the DOT didn't, include the pedestrian bridge in their grant projects. I wonder if anybody,
We can reach out to DOT, we haven't had a chance to debrief with them, there were just other projects that were ranked higher. There were a couple on the DOT, that were rail trail improvements, but they're more, rail trail improvements rather than this type of project, so.
thanks.
So that would be, yeah, we'll go back into that over here.
Okay,
When we get
yeah.
to that. First up is the new business, and that is on the recommendation on the, working with the state to recommend the application for the grant. Anybody? Richard? No?
For Hadley Falls.
Yeah.
I think I'm kind of with you, Peter, like, they're gonna do it no matter what. And I think that, you know, it'd probably be best if we worked with the state in the most, direct manner as possible to help make sure that we do what's best for the residents versus just going against it.
I think participating in it, it gives us a little bit, I don't know if Corey's gonna agree, but maybe give us a little bit more input and, when we're on board with the project. That's been my, and I'm not hiding that, I mean, it's been my feeling from the beginning, so. Jim?
First of all, I wanna say that I think Corey is the best thing that DES has going for it. But I'm a no, because, you know, they said the state says they're gonna maintain the areas that are uncovered. And this is the same state that was supposed to maintain the dam since the sixties and didn't do anything till we got into this situation. As you know, I kind of feel like Ukraine here, where all the decisions are made somewhere else, and then they come here to try to sell it to us, and whether we like it or not, it's gonna happen. And I just don't wanna be, I just don't wanna say, you know, and I understand it's gonna go forward and might not make any difference, but I just cannot say yes to that, and, you know,
I understand.
that's the way I
Mark?
feel.
I was gonna say, we wait, get the letter from the state, see what their plan is, so we don't have two plans fighting against one another, and,
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
well,
They've got a plan.
they've got a plan, but we're gonna put a plan together too, right?
No,
I thought we were.
no,
No?
we don't do it. That's their deal,
Yeah.
it's not ours.
There's no plan, we have no ability to actually influence. I mean, if we had a plan, I think most of us probably would have wanted the
Yeah.
Zigzag around.
fishery, like the ability to actually pass the fish. And
All
I
right.
think what I'm really worried about is like all the stuff that they're planning on removing out of there, more than anything else. And I don't, like, I guess the question is, like, we give them a letter and say, hey, we're behind you doing this. Should we also state in there that, you know, that they're still at least responsible for any of that aspect of sediment? I understand, I don't want us to have support and then have responsibility or any liability of the removal of that.
Again, I agree with you 100%. Derek, what's your feeling on that?
I understand what you're saying. I mean, it's one of the biggest unknowns of the alternative too, is that they just don't know simply what may be in that sediment. So that's definitely one of the big unknowns. I think they, DES did a good job identifying that in the grant application as well as the budget. It just, there's so much uncertainty on what could be potentially in that sediment.
It's my understanding that they're taking that responsibility of the sediment, whether it needs to be replaced, pulled out, covered, sealed, whatever, but it's my understanding from tonight's presentation that they were taking the responsibility for that.
I just don't want our support in any way, shape, or form to be perceived as also having responsibility for that.
Well, I think it's pretty much obvious from the discussion at this point that the decision and the project is out of our hands. And the only decision that we have is to support it and hopefully make it as successful as possible versus not supporting it and potentially getting a lesser version of the project.
Okay. Anybody else? Motion from somebody?
I'll make a motion to support the NHDES grant application to remove the Hadley Falls Dam.
I'll second that.
Anybody else? Questions? No.
Just the amendment that when we say that we're supporting the grant.
The grant. yes.
Exactly.
The grant, and it was good wording, thank you, Richard. The grant, and that we want to be very specific that any responsibility and liability removal of that sticks with the state.
I think that's already covered in the grant also, so. All right, so we have a motion on the floor by Richard, seconded by Josh. Any further discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Abstaining? So it's 4-1.
I would like to, if we send a letter, I would like it noted on there that I was a no, and that we weren't in
Unanimous.
unison here, so, okay, it's just so that,
Absolutely.
okay, thank you.
Okay, that was, on the old business again, I think we've got some out of service. We haven't heard anything on we don't have any update on the fire truck.
Yeah, the fire chief is still working through the fire truck and he's hoping to bring some solutions to you at a future meeting. I know he talked to another manufacturing and some other possible solutions. So.
Anybody got anything else? Motion?
Motion to adjourn?
I do not have non-public for you this evening.
I'll second.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Josh to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries.